Hello everyone, Mason here. Today I'm going to show you how to understand methods and what their purpose is. I'm making this video because I can see a lot of people are having some trouble getting down methods, and really if you don't understand methods or anything like that, you're not going to get a whole grasp on the rest of the class that you'll see here. So if we open our books, you want to learn about methods, which I highly recommend you read the book, because if you don't read the book, I mean, I still read it today. I go back and I look on it. There's no way you're ever going to actually remember all of this. Chapter 3 has to do with methods and variables. On page 50, section 3.2, you'll see that it explains a little bit about methods. So, I'm going to show this by doing. Which I usually don't typically do with methods, but here we go. I'm going to call this project Understanding Methods. So, first things first, we need to change some stuff up here. Like, all of you should know this by now. It should come natural to you. You might have to look it up. That's fine. But you'll memorize it eventually. And then we'll do super like that. Okay. So let's understand some methods. So what are methods? Methods are essentially a callable portion of code. What do I mean by call? Okay, well, every time we run this program and we get our little window up here, something happens. So with a JApplet, you're going to have two methods that will automatically run right away. So let's find out what happened. So let's say if you guys don't know this, you can do a system.out.println, and you can give yourself a little message like, this is the init method running. Okay? And I'm gonna do the same thing down here. Right below this, except instead of the init method running, I'm gonna put this is the paint method running. Okay. So let's find out what happens. So if I hit run, well, let's look. Well, nothing happened in the screen because I'm doing a system.out.println. If you look here at the bottom left of my screen, we can see that, wow, okay, so the init method got ran once and the paint method got ran twice on startup. Okay, so you should be able to understand now that, okay, so these methods, the method paint and the method init, get called upon right away when you hit that run button. Okay, well, let's try, we could do something really silly. We could do a simple while loop while I equals 0. I'm just going to show you something here. And we'll do an int I equals 0. And we'll do a repaint. Okay, and we'll do I equals 1. So what happens when we do this? So when we call a repaint, this isn't a typical way how you would call upon a method, but in order to call upon the paint method, you actually use this repaint here. So I have while I equals 0, which I equals 0 right up here, repaint, and then we're going to set I equal to 1, so it only runs once. So if we run this, oh, sorry. We see that paint method runs twice. Now the paint method typically will always run twice, even though I have this repaint in here, but essentially the point of the story is you can call upon methods later on. Call upon the paint method, you do repaint. So let's get rid of all this junk, okay? And let's actually get into making our own method, okay? So to get our own method, we're gonna go ahead and right below here, we're going to do public. So what public means, public or private. Once you get into multi-class programming, public and private are going to mean something to you. So a public class or a public method is going to be able to be runnable by other classes. Outside of this class, this method will be runnable. If it's private, only something in this class can run it. So for now, you can just leave it to public. The second variable, as you can see, init and paint are both void. Void means that it's going to return nothing. What do I mean by return? I'll show you in a minute. So this second portion could be anything. It could be public string, public int, public double, public character, be any of those things. So for now, I'll just leave it as void. The third portion is going to be the method name. Now typically a method should always be an action, like the name of it. So as you can see, public paint. What does paint do? Well, when we run paint, it actually paints things on our JApplet, almost like painting on a canvas. Init, short for initialize. It initializes the JApplet for us. So typically you don't want to name it something silly. You want to name it an action. Like maybe it's get price of item or calculate tuition. It's always going to be something like that. Okay? So in this example, we'll go ahead and we will we'll make it something very simple. We'll do count people. Okay? So it's just going to count people. And alright, so well, how are we going to do this? What do we need if we count people? Well, let's say we're going to count the total number of boys and girls, okay? So inside of a method, sometimes you can have parameters. So let's go ahead and discuss parameters. As you can see up here in Paint, we have a parameter called graphics, and we name it G. It's the same thing when you make a new variable type. So if we went up here and we did string welcome message equals welcome, that is the same thing. We just declared a variable called welcome message and we set it to something. Well, in a parameter, you don't set what it is. So let's just do something simple like this. Int boys, int girls. Okay? So now if we look at this, we have count people. Our parameters is int boys and int girls. Okay? So now what we'll do is we'll just go something like this. We'll do int total people equals boys plus girls. Okay? And then we can do a simple, just make sure it's working, system.out.println, and we'll just do total people. Okay? So let's go ahead and make sure I didn't write any errors. Okay. Well, why did nothing happen? Well, that's because we didn't call upon the method. Alright. So we know that the init method gets run once and the graphics method, or the paint method, typically gets run twice. So in this, we're going to call the method. The way you do that is you just type in the method name, count people. You're always going to have parentheses no matter what, and you have to end it with a semicolon. Well, if we go and look at count people, right here, it's count people, I already spelled that correctly. Well, it's got two parameters. It's going to take an integer, and it's going to take another integer, separated by a column. Well, when I look at this and I say, okay, well, what does the first integer mean? Boys. Okay, and I'm counting people, so I should probably put how many boys are going to be in there. Let's say we have 15 boys, okay? And int girls. This probably mean I'm counting people, that total number of girls I'd like to include in this count. We'll say there's 20. Okay. So now, if I look at this, I don't have to run it, and I should know what it does. I'm going to run this method called count people. I have 15 and 20. So let's look down here. Public void. Count people. Int boys, int girls. Alright, well int boys, if I look at it when I call it, it's 15. Okay, so I'll look down here. Int total people equals boys plus girls. What's boys? If you look here, boys, okay, it looks like someone who's going to call this method is going to tell us how many boys, and there's 15. So technically, this is the same thing as saying int total people equals 15 plus, we look at girls, we say, okay, girls, it looks like whoever's going to call this method is going to tell us how many girls in int form they're going to be. So 20. So basically, we could run this in our head right now. Int total people is going to be equal to 15 plus 20, or 35. So when we run this, we should be able to see when we get 35. And like I said, the paint method always runs twice on startup, so we got it twice. As you can see that now, alright, I got 35. Well, how does this help me? Why do I make a method? Alright, that's pretty simple to answer. Methods are going to give you a logical explanation of what the heck you're doing. I'm obviously counting people. I can call this method no matter who I give it to. If, let's say, you wish to count how many boys and girls are total in your classroom, let's say another classroom wants to know the same thing. Well, I mean, obviously this is a little bit simple method, but in a sense I could give them this method and they could call upon it, and it'll work no matter what, as long as they supply me with how many boys there are and how many girls there are. It'll always total it. Okay, well, that's nice, but it's really only outputting right now to the general output here. What if I want to take this information and use it somewhere else? Well, that's pretty simple. So let's go ahead, and instead of doing a system.out, here's what we'll do. We're going to do public, and like I said, we could return whatever we want. We're going to return an int. So what does that mean? Alright, we'll find out. So now, I'm simply just going to type in return total people. Oops. So now, as you see, if I look at this, I say, okay, total people, what's that? Well, total people equals boys plus girls. Well, what's boys and girls? Well, if I look up in my method, boys and girls are going to be supplied by whoever's calling the method. If I look up here, here's where it's being called. So 15, 20, alright, look back, put 15 and 20 in here. Then I kind of give it out. So 15 to boys, 20 to girls. Well, that's 35. So when I return, I'm going to return 35. So this is the same thing as returning 35. Alrighty? Okay, well, how do I use that? Well, that's pretty simple, actually. So let's say I'm calling this. Well, instead of doing this, let's say I'm doing a g.drawString. Okay? And I'm putting total number of people plus, and this is concatenating that. I'm going to put it at 2020. Okay? So, let's go ahead and run this just so you guys can get a feel of what I'm doing. Look at that. When I did this, it says total number of people, 35. That's pretty cool. So if we look at this, this is all that's happening when we run this program. Okay, we run it, the init method runs, nothing's there. The graphics method runs, and it looks like we got the super.paintg, and we're running this g.drawString. Okay, what are we writing out? We're writing out total number of people, and we're also going to pop out this method here. Count people 15, 20. Well, alright, well, if I want to figure out what the heck count people is, I'm assuming it's going to count some sort of people, I'll look down here to the public int count people method. I'm going to see, oh, well, the first integer, 15, oh, it's boys. The second integer, 20, oh, it's girls. So if I look in here, this is my math. This is the calculation that this method is doing. This is the entire brains of this method. It's creating a new int called total people equals boys plus girls. Well, if I look, 15 plus 20, so 35. And I look right here, this int means it's going to give me an integer. No matter what you do, it's going to give you an integer. Let's see what happens when I do this. If I comment that line out, I get an error message. You know what the error message is? Error, missing return statement. Okay? So you have to have a return statement in the core of your method. Okay? So you always have to have a return statement if this is not set to void. So if I look, okay, returning total people, so that's the same thing as 35. So if I look up here, total number of people, concatenate this method basically means 35, and I'm putting that 20x and 20y. Alright, so if I run that one more time, I get total number of people 35. Okay, that's pretty cool. Alrighty, so let's put in classroom A. And we'll do the same thing. Oops. We'll copy this. We'll paste it down here. So total number of people in classroom B. Let's say we have 555 boys and only 23 girls. Okay, and we're going to move this down about 30. Now let's run it. Oh, look at that. So we got total number of people in classroom A, so only 35. Total number of people in classroom B, 578. That's a lot of people. As you can see, I can call upon this method no matter how many times I like. And you look at that, it's still going to do the same instructions no matter what I do, and the parameters are essentially the variable. They're the things that could change with this calculation. Obviously, this would be really boring if I didn't have any parameters, okay? If I didn't have any parameters here and I just made so it was like int boys equals 35 and int girls equals 50, there's no point to this method anymore because I always know it's going to change to 85. Like, why would I make a method? The reason you make a method is to minimize your code and allow you to run the same execution, the same brains, but with different variables. So, as you can see, that's pretty cool. Now, do you have to use just integers in here when you call upon it, 15 or 20? No, you don't. You could make it anything. You could do int count1 equals 50. All right, and let's do this. Let's change this to count 1. We'll close our applet, run it. So we should get 70. See that? We got 70. As long as whatever you're putting in there matches this type, int boys, int, then it'll work. You could have it be a string, okay? And you could make it, you could turn it into an integer. I'll show you how to do that real quick. Alright, so page 139 of your book will tell you how to change a string to an int. Okay? So let's say instead of this being an int, let's call it a string, and we'll set it to 50. Just to show you all you can do with methods. Alright. So count 1. This might be a little bit above your head, so don't worry if you don't understand this. Read page 140 in your book. You can learn to do this. Okay. So, we will do integer.parseInt, and inside this, you just type in count 1. Okay? So what this is doing is you're creating an integer, you're parsing the int from a string. So as long as this string contains only integers, you'll be fine. So let's run it. You should still get 70. And look at that, we do. So you could pretty much take anything and make it into something. You could do this with JText fields, for example. So if you want to stick around real quick, I'll show you how to do that. So instead, we'll do JText field boy count, or we'll do JTF boy count. Okay? And then what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and make it real quick. So, okay, and then we'll do JTF boy count equals new JText field. Make it empty. We'll do JTF boy count dot set bounds. We'll put it at, oh, I don't know, put it at 20. We'll put it at 80. We'll make it 300. We'll make it 150 length and 20. You don't know how to do null layouts, I have a tutorial on it that you can find in my my playlist. And then we'll just do this dot add JTF boy. This dot add JTF boy count. Okay. Now let's change this count 1 to JTF JTF boy count dot get text. Okay. And then what we'll do, since just so we don't get a null error right away, we'll set this to 2. Okay. All right. Hopefully, run this out any errors. Oops, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to put it up there. Set this to 2. Right away, as you can see, my JText field has the number 2 in it, and therefore it said, alright, we're parsing an int from the JText field boy count, and we're getting the text from it, we're parsing that into an int. As you can see, I auto-generated with a 2 there, So it added 2 and 20 together, and we got that. So you could do this, and you can make it so, you know, you could make another method for when you press a button, it does the calculations instead of running right off the bat, stuff like that. So I'd highly recommend you mess around with methods now that hopefully you have a better understanding of them and how they work. So in your calculate tuition method, instead of making this a void, and instead of doing all this other good junk, I'd highly recommend that you would do like maybe double, you know, cost of book, and then maybe an integer for how many books, or a double for cost of credit and an integer for how many credits. So that would be the most prime way to do the calculate tuition method. So once you get that down, hopefully you understand methods pretty well. The only other thing I want to show you real quick is, so int total people, right? I created this variable total people inside of this method, okay? Inside of the count people method. I cannot access that variable outside of this method, okay? So let's just get rid of this good junk, and we'll type in total people, and we'll put it at 2020, okay? Let's see what happens. Look at that. It cannot find the symbol total people. It doesn't understand what that variable is. That's because it's only in the count people method. That means that I cannot access this variable unless I do it with it inside of this method. That's why you have to make sure when you start making your project, you put what is important for everything in your project up here. So you declare your variables up here that are going to be needed in multiple methods, okay? I would highly recommend you always make your swing components initialize up here, because you never really know when you're going to do something like that. But we, down here, total people, the only thing that cares about total people is this method, because it returns total people. So when I call this method, as you saw before, it's going to give me that no matter what. So I should always call upon that method in order to retrieve that information. So hopefully that clears a little bit up. I know this is a little bit long video at about 22 minutes, but I really felt like a lot of people were struggling with methods, didn't know what was really going on with methods, and just so you also know, you can make pretty much as many methods as you really want to, as long as they're logical, and as long as they're usually doing an action, okay? Well, I hope this helps. Have a wonderful night.